Alright, it's Mike Redacted. Fallout 5 is probably at least 7 or 8 years away at this point. This may not be the news you want to hear, but it's true. Whilst waiting for Fallout 5 to come out and disappoint me in some way, I usually go back and play either Fallout 4 or New Vegas to scratch the Fallout itch. Recently I've been replaying Fallout New Vegas and it's definitely my favourite entry in the Fallout series so far, and by that I mean the modern Fallout series. I haven't played 1, 2 or Tactics that much. I don't think it's a groundbreaking statement, as I'm sure it's a common opinion that Fallout New Vegas is the best. This week, I wanted to examine what makes Fallout New Vegas such a good game and why it is, in my opinion, better than the other Fallouts. This is in spite of New Vegas's multiple flaws brought about by the incredibly short 18-month development cycle. In this video, I will not be mentioning Fallout 76. I didn't really play that one, as I was turned off by the initial release. I know the game has gotten better in recent years, and I even have a copy of it for free with Xbox Game Pass. I imagine I'll get round to playing it in the future though, but that time's not now. Just like how you always begin in jail in the Elder Scrolls games, I will always begin at the tutorial in these sorts of videos. New Vegas' character creator is short. Doc Mitchell peels you off the bed, makes sure the player's brain damage isn't too bad, and then pushes them out the door. The whole affair just takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes and then you're out into the Mojave Wasteland. The actual tutorial itself is optional too. You can go to the saloon and talk to Sunny Smiles to complete it. The whole thing is optional, but it just takes 20 minutes or so if you really want to do it. I think the short character creator and tutorial are good, as the player doesn't need to be stuck in a linear section for up to an hour to explain and tutorialise the game. I really like Fallout 3 and 4, but the pain of playing through these games again is redoing the starting section of each game. Fallout 3 is by far the worst offender here. At least 45 fucking minutes to an hour just to be shat out into the capital wasteland. Replaying New Vegas, it takes no time at all and you're out to do whatever the hell you want in 5 minutes or so. I feel like Fallout New Vegas really benefits from having a cutscene at the start of the game which actually explains the story and what the player is about to experience, instead of just exposition and about war. You know, I love the Fallout 3 starting as much as the next guy and Ron Perlman's silky smooth licks from his voice. That's great and all that. But really what they should be doing is they should be explaining the story and then shitting you out into the wasteland to do whatever the hell you want as fast as possible. And really, Fallout New Vegas takes the trophy for this one, and it's so much better than the starts of Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. The next point I want to talk about is map design. At the beginning of the game, it's obvious that you need to go north to the actual city of New Vegas and return the favour to Benny by blowing his fucking brains out. But if you try to go north, you will likely be met with a swift and brutal end. Either the Deathclaws at Quarry Junction will rip you to shreds, or the Cazadors will sting you to death. I know the player can actually go north if you have a bit of knowledge and you're tactical about it. Maybe you do a bit of sneaking to get past the Deathclaws without them noticing you. But it's quite obvious that the game is trying to persuade the player to go south. Along the southern route to New Vegas, it's likely that the player will be introduced to the two main factions, the NCR and Caesar's Legion. I don't know if it's Kaiser or Caesar, but I'll be calling it the Legion for the duration of this video for simplification and so people don't crucify me in the comments section. You can meet the NCR in either Prim or at the Unification Monument where the big statues who are shaking hands are, and you can meet the Legion in Nipton after they've done some decorating. The interaction with the Legion when you first meet them in Nipton is especially good, as it showcases to the player the brutality of the Legion, and it gives them an idea of what the Legion is meant to stand for and how they would deal with the so-called degenerates that they see. I think this is very good world design, as by pushing the player to go south rather than to go north, they also delay them in getting to the strip. The scene is set for the game and the player gets information about each faction and the story before they really find out how they are involved in it, and crucially before they make any real and unrecoverable decisions about faction relations. You can even meet some of the more minor factions along this route, including the Powder Gangers, the Great Khans, and even a member of the Brotherhood of Steel if you happen to talk to Veronica. at the 188 trading post. Although at the time you don't know that she's part of the Brotherhood of Steel unless you try and recruit her, and then she doesn't keep the secret very well, she pretty much just reveals it immediately. Pushing the player to go south also forces the player to explore and see more of the map before they really get to the meat and potatoes of the main story. Asking about the whereabouts of Benny will help the player on their route round the south to the strip. Once the player does reach the strip and they meet with Mr. House, it's likely that they will already have met two of the main factions, done multiple side missions, and have some good perks and gear. The player has an idea at this point about what the whole game is about, and they are ready to be sent to go and deal with Benny and make one of the first major decisions of the game at the Legion's camp. Next we're going to talk about factions. Of all the factions in the modern Fallouts, I think that New Vegas has the best ones. Each of the main factions has a distinct goal and internal issues, just like a real faction would. The NCR wants to bring law and order to the Mojave Wasteland, but they're tangled up in bureaucracy, and many of the troops that they have in the Mojave Wasteland have become dejected with the mission. The Legion wants to expand their empire and bring tribal rule and rid the wasteland of what they consider to be degenerates to the Mojave Wasteland, but are heavily reliant on their leader, Caesar or Kaiser, who secretly has a brain tumour which is killing him. Mr. House wants to keep New Vegas independent from the rule of other factions, but he struggles to do anything as he's literally confined to a sterile container. He's relying on his robots and the player to do 100% of his bidding. The nuance that you see amongst the factions in New Vegas is much better than in Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, you have the Brotherhood of Steel, the good guys who want to give out purified water for the benefit of all, and the Enclave, the cut and dry bad guys who want to put an additive into the water in order to kill everything which was affected by radiation. I'm sure in real life there are some people who may claim that there's nuance in the point about if genociding those affected by radiation is the correct choice or not, but I don't think that is what the developers intended. It's similar to blowing up the nuking Megaton. One path of the quest is undoubtedly the evil path, and the other one is the good one. Video game choices where there's one good and one evil choice are kind of boring. There should be choices which have a bit of nuance, where the player needs to think about the pros and the cons. The factions in Fallout 4 are a bit better than the factions in Fallout 3 though. To quickly run through the factions in Fallout 4, there's the Minutemen, a faction which wants to join the settlements together for the benefit of everyone. They also give you an endless supply of quests, which are really annoying. There's the Railroad, who want to protect the synths and somehow think that the synths are equal to humans. If your toaster could talk, the Railroad would be advocating for them. There's the Institute, kind of fucked up semi-isolationist faction who believe that developing technology can be developed for the benefit of mankind. The only problem is that they seem to be caught up in doing evil shit like snatching people away, murdering them, and then replacing them with synths. They are rumoured to be some sort of evil boogeyman of the Commonwealth, and it turns out that they kind of are. And that makes me feel less bad for instantly gunning down Father the first time I saw him. And the final main faction is the Brotherhood of Steel. They make another appearance in Fallout 4, but this time they aren't the golden heroes that they were in Fallout 3. Instead, this time they want to destroy the Institute and destroy the Railroad to ultimately control what they consider to be dangerous technology. The factions in Fallout 4 definitely are a bit more nuanced and fleshed out than they are in Fallout 3, but it feels like they're almost a parody of themselves sometimes. The factions in New Vegas still seem more realistic than the factions in Fallout 4, even when you take into account the NPCs in New Vegas have dead eyes and plasticine faces. On top of the factions in New Vegas being cooked better than in any other modern Fallout game, they also seem to react more clearly to your actions. Every faction in the game has a reputation that you have with them. This faction reputation shows whether the player will be attacked on sight, largely ignored, or welcomed with open arms when interacting with the members of the faction or going to where they are. You can even put on one of the faction's armour to blend in with that faction, a feature which becomes useful if you want an easy way to get into the New Vegas Strip without needing to raise 2,000 caps. All you need to do is pull the armour off a dead NCR and use the monorail to enter the strip. Depending on your actions, the faction will seek you out in the wasteland. This can be to give you a radio to help you, or to hunt you down if you have a very negative standing with the faction. These game mechanics make it so that the factions are actually fun to interact with. The next topic I want to talk about is the presence of a real war. In Skyrim, General Tullius or Ulfric Stormcloak will tell you that Skyrim is embroiled in a civil war, but when you walk around the map, you really don't see any combat between the factions at all, apart from little scripted bits. Most you see is the faction war camps and perhaps some patrolling along the road. From the player's perspective, the huge all-out war which is meant to be happening in Skyrim seems to be more like a Cold War, or a figment of General Tullius and Ulfric Stormcloak's imagination maybe. The war only happens with the player's input. In New Vegas, the faction camps for the NCR and the Legion do exist, but you can also happen across members of the NCR and the Legion battling it out in the southeast of the map, or you can even find the Legion and some traders having a gun battle. It feels like more effort was put into making the conflict in New Vegas feel more real and reactive than it was in Skyrim and even in Fallout 4. Fallout 4's weapons probably are the most realistic to the setting of a world 200 years post-nuclear apocalypse which didn't recover. I find the weapons in Fallout New Vegas to be the best though. All of the pipe rifles in Fallout 4 are ugly, and I often found they were underpowered too. It seemed like most of the human enemies in Fallout 4 did have the pipe rifles, and when it was in their hands it hit like a goddamn runaway truck, but when I took it off their corpse it was like a goddamn pea shooter. I don't really think that this schizo damage model is present in Fallout New Vegas with the guns. All the guns feel like they do the damage that they're meant to do to both the player and to their unfortunate victims. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and try and gaslight you into thinking that the wooden gunplay in Fallout New Vegas is somehow better than the gunplay in Fallout 4. Fallout 4 has much better shooting mechanics, and the shooting mechanics feel very fluid and relatively well put together for a game which came out in 2015. But I feel like the variety of weapons available in Fallout 4 just feels smaller, and the guns often feel like they're very similar to other guns. There's very little variation. It didn't feel like this was the case in Fallout New Vegas. I also really like the aesthetic of the guns in Fallout New Vegas. A lot of them played into the cowboy-esque setting of the game. You had revolvers like the 357 Magnum revolver, lever action guns like the trail carbine, and even shotguns like the lever action shotgun, which are reminiscent of what a stagecoach robber might use in the mid 19th century. The weapons in New Vegas are just cooler, and I find myself excited when I find a new weapon, unlike in 4, where the weapons could be repetitive and required skills into the gunsmithing tree to make them reach their full potential. The only complaint I would have about New Vegas weapon choice is that the Chinese assault rifle, which was my favourite gun from Fallout 3, did not return for New Vegas. I know the gun isn't in the game because of lore reasons, but they could have found a way to write it in or make it some kind of one-off special or something along those lines, but they didn't. Survival mode built in. Now, some of you who have watched my previous videos probably think that I'm like a broken record with this point, like Todd Howard, constantly repacking and selling the same thing over and over again, but New Vegas has a survival mode built into it. Fallout is arguably the best setting for a survival mode, better than Skyrim, and I think it's a great addition to Fallout New Vegas, which makes the player feel vulnerable and requires the player to play more tactically. In this survival mode, fast travel is possible, but if you run out of food and water during your fast travel journey, then you'll die upon arrival at your destination. The DLC. I think the DLC in New Vegas is absolutely amazing, much better than the DLC in any other of the Fallout games, the modern Fallout games that is. I don't know if there is any DLC for the classic Fallout video games. Disregarding all of the item pack DLC, which plagues you with notifications after you get ejected from Doc Mitchell's house, all of the DLC in Fallout New Vegas takes you to new and interesting places with good storylines and good writing. The first DLC, Dead Money, takes you to the Sierra Madre Hotel The setting of this DLC forces you to change how you play the game. The player is stripped of all their gear and has a bomb collar placed around their neck, which explodes if they stand next to a radio for too long. There's also toxic clouds of gas which kill the player if they spend too long in them. I know some players did not like this DLC as they felt it hampered them intentionally, and some of the parts of the DLC can feel unfairly hard, so that is a fair criticism. But I still think even with those fair criticism points, it is still one of the greats of the Fallout series. The whole DLC is about letting go. The main companions have some goal which they eventually have to either let go of or die. Dean needs to let go of his grudge against Sinclair. God/Dog needs to let one of their personalities go. And Father Elijah needs to let go of his dream of using the toxic cloud as a weapon. If you take the good ending, this is ultimately what causes Father Elijah's demise. Even the player needs to let go of something. At the end of the game, the player is faced with hundreds of thousands of caps worth of gold ingots, but unfortunately they cannot take it with them as they would most likely die in the vault that it's placed in. I know that you can do tricks like cutting off Father Elijah's head and carrying it in order to successfully leave with all of the gold ingots, but this really isn't an intentional design choice by Obsidian, and it more comes down to the fact that the player is getting creative in a game which has great sandbox features. I really love the message of this DLC, and I feel like it means so much more than any of the DLC in Fallout 3 or Fallout 4 ever could. Second of New Vegas' DLC is Honest Hearts, and Honest Hearts is probably what I'd consider to be the weakest of all the DLC in the game. It only really takes 3 or 4 hours to complete if you don't mess around too much, and you can even complete this DLC almost immediately if you just go ahead and kill Follows Chalk. The location that you go to in this DLC is really interesting to explore, and there are a couple of cool weapons to find in this DLC too. In the DLC, there are tribes which are at war with each other. The main aggressor faction of the DLC, the White Legs, wants to eradicate the two peaceful tribes, the Sorrows and the Dead Horses, and integrate themselves into the Legion. The two allies of the peaceful tribes, Joshua and Daniel, have opposing views on how to deal with the White Legs. Either you can preserve the nature of the tribes and side with Daniel by evacuating out the area or like a bitch, or you can choose to fight back like a real man, with the White Legs being killed and eradicated themselves. Choosing to eradicate the White Legs means that, in Daniel's opinion at least, the peaceful tribes lose their innocence. The third DLC to come out is Old World Blues. This is a really funny DLC with a cool setting and quality writing. It's probably my favourite of all the DLC. The DLC is ultimately about how the characters of the DLC are wrapped up in the past, and despite being some of the finest minds of their time, they are not useful in any way to the present or the future. The floating heads in the think tank are too worried about Dr. Mobius or what his grand plans are, instead of doing anything which could be useful for the people who are suffering around the wastelands, or any part of the destroyed world for that matter. They've had their memories partially erased by Dr. Mobius, and they are really wacky as fuck. On top of this, the setting is really cool. As I mentioned, there's loads to explore here, loads of really cool weapons and new game mechanics. I really love this DLC and I can't wait to go back and play it again. The final of the story DLC, and possibly the most confusing for me when I was 15 when the game came out, is Lonesome Road. Lonesome Road is the last thing you're meant to do before you go and fight at the Hoover Dam. It is meant to give closure to a lot of Courier 6's story. Apparently Courier 6 delivered some parcel in the past, and this was used to destroy an area which Ulysses, the antagonist of the DLC, is in. The DLC has quite interesting design and enemies. I'm not really sure what any of it means, to be honest. I can't really draw any conclusions. The cool design and quite linear parts are cool to play, I guess, but ultimately for me it was nothing more than that. And if someone could leave me an explanation of what it's really about in the comments section below, that would be fantastic. Now that you know all about New Vegas' 4 amazing DLC packs, when you compare it to what's in 3 and what's in 4, nothing can really compare. I mean, I liked Far Harbor from Fallout 4, but it just doesn't hit the same of some as Fallout New Vegas's DLC, and I also liked Point Lookout from Fallout 3, but it's just not the same. The writing's not there, and they're not long enough, and they don't have enough cool side missions, side content, and that sort of thing to even hold a candle to what is in Fallout New Vegas. Notable missions. Some of the best and most interesting quests in the Fallout series is in New Vegas. DLC missions aside, you have quests like Come Fly With Me, a quest which the player likely gets when they pass through Novak on the way to the Strip the first time. Initially, the player may think it's a simple quest to clear out some ghouls from an old retcon facility near the town, but when you actually go there, you realise that the quest is so much more. There is a group of ghouls and one human who thinks he's a ghoul at the facility trying to launch a rocket and reach some mythical promised land in space. To help these people, first you have to get rid of the Nightkin from the facility. The Nightkin are a kind of super mutant who used too many stealth boys and became even more wacko than they were before. You can remove the Nightkin the old-fashioned way by icing them, or you can persuade them to go on their own. They're only at the facility because they want the supply of stealth boys that's there, and if you get them the stealth boys, they will just leave. Next, you need to help the ghouls and the one human get two things which they need to launch the rocket. After you bring the required items, you need to tell Chris Havisham that he is in fact a human and cannot go on the mythical trip with the rest of them. This opens the quest up to an evil ending. Instead of helping them launch off into space, where they'll probably die a horrific death anyway, you can now sabotage the launch so they never even reach it to space. This is a great quest because it starts out as something simple as clearing a location, and it turns into a quest with twists and turns which has multiple endings and multiple choices that you need to make along the way. Plus, it's really funny to see the evil ending where you sabotage the launch of the rockets and they crash into each other with a spectacular Fallout New Vegas explosion. This is just one great quest which is in New Vegas, but the whole game world is literally littered with great quests just like this. With twists and turns, they may start out as something that seems simple, but they have twists and turns which turn into something bigger and better than you ever expected. Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas have some pretty one-dimensional quests where things are exactly as they seem. Go to this location, pick up the item, come back, finish the quest, that's it. And that's why I would say that Fallout New Vegas has the best quests by far. Before I conclude the video, I would like to address the amount of bugs that are in the game. When the game first released, it was an absolute mess. This was caused, in my opinion, by the 18-month development cycle. The reason that Bethesda gave Obsidian only 18 months to develop a game is because Bethesda did not want it to be released too close to the release of Skyrim. For those not in the know, a game usually gets developed for about 4 years, and it can go on for as much as 7 years in extreme examples. The Elder Scrolls Oblivion was developed in about 4 years to 4.5 years. A lot of the bugs which existed in the release of the game still exist in the game today. During my latest playthrough, there were more than a few crashes to desktop, especially when I was playing the Come Fly With Me quest, where it seemed like every second or third loading screen door that I needed to go through was just a crash to desktop with absolutely no error. The New Vegas anti-crash mod and some unofficial patch mod are pretty much essential for even a vanilla playthrough at this point, so off the back of this video, if you want to go and replay New Vegas, I would definitely recommend getting some stability mods in there. All of these points accumulate to make Fallout New Vegas the best modern Fallout game. Please let me know in the comments section if you think I missed something that makes the game great, or if you disagree with me in some way. Thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe and all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, have a good one, I'll see you next time.